that's where it started. Hello, this is Paul.
This is Laura.
And I'm Alton.
We are Team Derringer.
And you are listening to Derringer Discoveries,
where we take you, the listener, on an adventure.
a music adventure.
Like a railroad train, plays with rock and roll, like you know time happens when you book a stroll, like a big brick wall right across your heart. I won't be there when you cry.
With us today, listeners, is a featured guest coming to us from Paris, France. His name is Elliott Murphy, and he has been on the music scene releasing albums for over 51 years. He is a rock musician, a singer-songwriter, a novelist, a record producer, and a journalist. Let's welcome our featured guest, Elliott Murphy.
Well, after baby comes around, we're gonna go downtown and see what it is we should know.
Elliott, welcome to the podcast. Would you tell our listeners a little about yourself?
Well, I will plead guilty to all of those definitions, but I am also an actor.
Ah, yes.
A few films, never a big part. So I will lay claim to all those things. And I think above all, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of music. I'm a fan of literature. I always say, literature is my religion and rock and roll is my addiction, so.
And Elliott, we are absolutely fans of yours.
Yeah, we are.
Indeed.
There's a garden of Eden, if you set your mind to it. It's a perfect reason to open up your eyes.
Elliott, you call Paris, France home. How long has it been home for you?
I moved here, Paul, in 1989, so it's been about 35 years.
But you grew up somewhere else. In fact, I believe you're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Long Island.
It's actually called the Long Island Music and Entertainment Hall of Fame.
Long Island's about to get a Music and Entertainment Hall of Fame museum to honor and preserve its music heritage.
I dare people to find a place, not only in the country, in the world, that has produced so much musical talent.
I did grow up in Long Island in a town called Garden City, which I don't know if this was a portent of things to come, was where Charles Lindbergh took off from on his solo flight to Paris in 1927.
Oh, how about that?
The spirit of 76, right?
Yeah, grew up in Garden City.
Garden City.
Then I lived in Manhattan for about 20 years when my career was taking off and getting settled, and then I moved here. So I've actually lived here in Paris, France, much longer than anywhere else.
Sous les ponts de Paris, lorsque descend la nuit.
So did you move for music or love?
Or the love of music.
Good. I like that. I moved here for love first of France, I think. I came to France first in 1971. I was, a long-haired hippie. My sister was a stewardess, so I got a cheap flight on Pan Am, and I went to Amsterdam, and I went to Brussels, and then I came to Paris, and I just loved Paris. But I always loved the European lifestyle. It just suited me for a lot of reasons. So I moved here in 1989 because my career in 10 years had totally shifted from America to Europe.
You never know what you're in for.
Did you find that the European fans resonated with you more, or did you just like playing European venues better?
No, what happened, I was on 3 major labels in America in the 70s. Did my first album for Polydor, Aquashow, did 2 albums for RCA because Lou Reed took me to RCA. He was there. And then I did one for Columbia. And then it's kind of like I flew up the rock and roll mountain and I fell down the other side. And by the end of the 70s, I was kind of lost and my career was not in a good way. And just by chance, still had a booking agent, ICM, which International Creative Management was quite a big one back then. And they got a call or a telex, whatever it was back then, from France, from this place called a venue called the Palace, and they wanted to book me for a show. And man, I was playing a blues bar in New York at this time for a weekly gig. And I said, sure. And I went there not knowing what to expect. And it was like sold out. You know, there was 1,000 people. I did 6 encores because I didn't want to leave that stage. And at that point, I said, wow, maybe I do have a second act.
This is all about us. It's not just a story from America. So on a petite histoire d'Amérique.
Bonjour, this is Elliott Murphy coming to you from Paris, France. You're listening to Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
This is Addison from Fort Worth, Texas. We are all listening to Derringer Discoveries.
Just a story from America. He left his job and he looks at her. I said, I had enough. Put down his coffee cup and every night she...
From that time to 79 to 89, everything shifted to Europe. I started touring in Europe regularly. I did a long tour with Rory Gallagher, you might have heard of. He was very famous.
Yeah.
And I started in France, but I quickly spread to Spain. And going to Spain was interesting because, you know, during Franco's reign, rock and roll was forbidden. You couldn't buy Rolling Stones records in Spain. So when I first played in Spain in 83, I was like the Beatles. Spain, Italy, Belgium, all those places. And in 89, it was time to move here. And I did.
Bonjour les auditeurs, ici Electro One de Paris, en France. J'écoute Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
Bonjour à tous, c'est Tilly qui vous parle de Prague, en République tchèque. J'écoute Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
Love, you mentioned, I had met my wife, Françoise, on the road 6 years before. She's an actress. And she was in a little acting troupe, and I was playing a show somewhere, and we both found ourselves in the same restaurant at midnight. Got her number, we dated a couple of times, and then we didn't see each other or any contact for 6 years.
Wow.
Came to France, I started looking for her, and I found her, and we're still together. She's right upstairs right now.
It's great to be here tonight. Beautiful night. I'd like to dedicate this song to my wife. I just got married about 2 weeks ago.
We were both footloose and fancy-free and kind of ready to settle down, and a year later our son was born, Gaspar. The good thing about being married to a French woman is no matter how bad you're fighting, when it's time to eat, everything stops, you know.
You are listening to Derringer Discoveries.
Elliott, when you were inducted into the Long Island Music and Arts Hall of Fame, who inducted you?
Well, it was this, unknown singer from Long Island called Billy Joel.
Sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight.
It was Billy Joel, and we had reconnected a couple of years ago. We were friends back in the 70s because we were both in Columbia. I opened a lot of shows for him. We were both from Long Island, and we were featured together in a famous article in Newsweek, which was called Suburban Rock or Split Level Rock, and it was about this new kind of rock and roll where the lyrics were moaning about the middle class existence. We were moaning about it back then. Now everyone's still trying to stay middle class, So we reconnected some years later because I found a photo of me and him and Dr. John. And
wow.
Yeah.
I managed to get that to Billy, and he really appreciated it. And we became like buddies, and he inducted me into the Long Island Music Hall of Fame. And then, if that's not enough, 3 days later, he was doing his residency at Madison Square Garden. You might have heard of him. He's played over 100 shows there.
Yeah.
He invited me on stage, and we did Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed, who was also from Long Island. So the circle was complete.
I said, hey, babe, take a walk on the wild side. All right. Huh.
Yeah, there is. And you said Lou Reed is the one who brought you from Polydor to RCA.
Exactly. Yeah, Lou, I met before I ever recorded a note of music. I kind of came under the wing of a guy named Paul Nelson, who was a famous rock and roll critic. And he was also working for Mercury Records at the time. And I was knocking on doors with my brother trying to get a record deal. And Mercury Records was going to put out a live Velvet Underground album called Live 1969. And he knew I was a fan, and he asked me to write liner notes. And I wrote the liner notes for that album. And he passed them on to Lou to approve them. And this is really funny. Lou called my mother because some reason that was the number Paul Nelson had, and had a long conversation with my mother because they grew up very close to each other on Long Island, South Shore. Lou was from a place called Freeport, and my mother was from Baldwin. And my mother, to her dying day, remembered what Lou said to her. At the end of the conversation, she said, you know, my son will be very pleased to have heard from you. And Lou said, why is that? And my mother said, because he admires you so much. And Lou said, doesn't everybody?
Tuttlingen, Deutschland. Hört Derringer Discoveries.
Elliott, as you know, Derringer Discoveries likes to count down our 5 favorite songs so far by the featured artists that we are interviewing. We'll count down our top 5 favorites so far, and after we identify each song, we'll ask you to comment and tell us something interesting or historically interesting about that song. I'm going to start us off with pick number 5, and because I'm such a big fan of yours, Elliott, I actually crammed 2 into pick number 5 with the idea of going with a sampling of your songs that were featured on your major album releases. So the first song for pick number 5 is Last of the Rock Stars. It's the opening track on your debut album, released in 1973. Elliott, what can you tell us about Last of the Rock Stars?
The strange thing is, the first song on my first album, the first word of the title is last. Now, isn't that weird right there?
Yeah, that is.
I wrote that song, as I said, I was in 1971. I was in Europe and I was busking around, and there was all these tragic deaths of the rock stars I loved, you know, Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Brian Jones. I always like to say Jim Morrison lasted 3 months in Paris. I've lasted 35 years. So the chorus of that, rock and roll is here to stay, but who will be left to play? You know, I was a little worried who would be left to play.
Rock and roll is here to stay, but who will be left to play?
Little did we know Mick Jagger would still be on stage at 80 years old with Keith Richards and Paul McCartney, 82. A lot of my generation, I mean, Bruce is still, we're 75. So that was one of the first songs I wrote. I believe I wrote that in Europe on that trip. That was on my original demo that I played for Polydor. And the first time I heard that song on the radio on a FM station in New York was when it all became real for me. When you hear a song of yours played on the radio, then you go, wow, this is really happening. And that's a life-changing moment.
It's the last of the rock stars and me and you and rock and roll is here to stay, but who will be left to play? Come on, mama, please don't cry. Don't you know I feel inside?
Listeners, that's Derringer Discovery's pick number 5A, our top 5 favorites so far, by Elliott Murphy, which leads to pick number 5B. And we won't do this for all top 5, just I used my discretion because I also wanted to cover your third album, which was on RCA. And on that album, there's a song that every time I listen to it, it just grabs me and demands that I keep listening to it. It's called Deco Dance from 1976.
And the band gets a hand for the deco
Elliott, tell us something about Deco Dance.
Well, the big secret about Deco Dance, which I didn't reveal many years later, it was really about Lou Reed.
Yeah.
Because when I say they're going to crush your banana, they had the famous banana on the cover of the Velvet Underground.
Sunday morning, and I'm falling. I've got a feeling
And I hung around with Lou, and he was such a character and such a mercurial personality. So it was a little bit of, it was a lot inspired by Lou. Lou was the first genuine rock star, I guess, I knew and hung out with. And he used to say his week beats your year. And that was true because he wouldn't sleep much in a week, first of all. Lou was supposed to produce my second album. And we were at his house and we were doing the pre-production. And I remember the first night we worked till like 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, Lou, I got to go home and get some sleep. And he said, all right, okay. And I went back to my apartment. I was in bed 20 minutes when the phone rang and it was Lou. He said, you ready to start up again? You know? But then he got a drug bust for a phony prescription or something. And that kiboshed that project. One of the wonderful things about that album is not only does it have Billy Joel playing piano on that song, excuse me, Deco Dance, Billy Joel is playing piano. But there's a marvelous stand-up bass player named Richard Davis.
They're gonna get you soon.
Who played with Miles Davis.
They're gonna crush your banana. They're gonna blow your balloon.
And was just a legend in the jazz world. And he played on 2 or 3 songs of that album.
I heard you say that you never quoted for quite what you mean.
And also Doug Yule, I think, was of the Velvet Underground, is singing some backgrounds on that song. There's really an all-star cast. There's a lot of history around that song. It's one of those songs which has really held up over the years, so I'm very pleased you chose it.
You are listening to Derringer Discoveries.
Listeners, that's Derringer Discoveries pick number 5B, Deco Dance by Elliott Murphy. And as Elliott mentioned, it contains a number of celebrities and well-known musicians, including Billy Joel.
This is Alex of Chacal Bandage. I enjoy listening to Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
Laura, on to you.
Okay, so for pick number 4, we have Elliott's song Texas from the 1985 album Milwaukee. The song is written by Elliott Murphy, but is a brilliant collaboration with Jerry Harrison of Talking Heads fame. Elliott, I'm sure our listeners would much rather hear from you about this song, the lyrics, the songwriting process. Tell us all about it.
Laura, I think it's very apropos that you would choose this song because this is one of the most romantic, heartbreaking songs I've ever written or performed.
Her voice sounded just like Texas.
Maybe you saw it from a woman's perspective.
Riding south into Mexico.
So they say men are actually more romantic than women. I'm trying to figure out the answer to that.
A firework scattered across town. She walks in her grandma's nightgown.
That was about a short-lived love affair I had with a wonderful woman who was from Texas. She was a Comanche Indian, in fact. And I went down there. We spent a couple of weeks together and we're driving south into Mexico. And that's where that line, driving south into Mexico. And I used to perform that song at this blues bar named Tramps in New York, where I had a regular Wednesday night gig. It seemed it rained every Wednesday night. And then Jerry Harrison, who used to be in my band, I fired him. Best thing that ever happened to him because then he joined the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
He would come hear us play, Laura. And he liked that song a lot, Texas, and Out for the Killing, another song on that album. And he said, you should come out to Milwaukee and we can record. He had a deal with the studio he was working in. And I went out there, and that trip to Milwaukee changed my life. I don't want to go into too many details, but I stopped all my bad habits after that trip.
Across my heart, when the lights go down, I'll entertain you. I swear I'll never try.
Well, it's a fantastic song. We absolutely love it. Listeners, that's Texas from the 1985 album Milwaukee. Alton, off to you for number 3.
Listeners, the Derringer Discoveries pick number 3 by Elliott Murphy is Everything I Do Leads Me Back to You from Elliott's 1995 album Selling the Gold.
Everything I do leads me back to you.
Elliott, tell us about this song, and for our listeners that don't know, tell us who performed it with you.
Well, Everything I Do, and the reason it has such a long title, Everything I Do Leads Me Back to You, is because there is the song by Bryan Adams.
Bryan Adams, yeah.
Everything I Do. So to differentiate the two, we had to put in parentheses, Leads Me Back to You. That actual song was inspired by, after I went to a Lucinda Williams concert.
Yeah.
At the South by Southwest. Do you know what that is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I performed there twice at the South by Southwest festival. And I went to see Lucinda Williams and just loved it. She was so great. I mean...
Ladies and gentlemen, rough trade recording artist Lucinda Williams.
And her phrasing really inspired me to write that song. And then after I wrote it, I said, wow, Bruce Springsteen could sing this song. And I called him up and I said, would you consider, singing on my... We've been friends for a long time. We started out together. We were both the new Bob Dylans in the early 70s. And, I'd visit him in New Jersey many times, and he'd come here in Paris, come to my home. And he said, sure, let me hear it next time you come over. So I took a special trip to New York, went out to New Jersey, and I said, well, where can we listen to the demo? And he said, well, let's listen to it in the car. So there it was. I remember it was New Jersey. It was at night. It was raining. And we're sitting in Bruce Springsteen's vintage Cadillac. We're sitting in his car, and I'm thinking, this is like a Bruce Springsteen song right here, sitting in this car. And he said, yeah, I could play that. I could sing on that. Sure. Okay. Right. So we sent him over the tapes, the digital tapes from the studio I was working at in Belgium. And then I didn't hear from him for months. And I figured, well, he just probably became too busy and no problem. And then about 3 months after that initial meeting, my phone rang. It was like 4:00 in the morning, and it was Bruce. And he said, Elliott, I did it. And I said, Bruce, do you know what time it is in Paris? And he said, I only know what time it is in New Jersey. And he did. He said, I did it. I sang it. Okay. Oh, and I was just thrilled, couldn't wait to hear it, but they had to send it back. So when I finally got it, I had only asked Bruce if he could sing on the chorus.
Yeah, everything I do leads me back to you.
But the second verse, it's about getting your tires blown out and keep rolling. And I guess he couldn't resist.
They can blow my tires out till I'm filled up with nothing else but tires. Still I'm rolling on my rims. Oh, baby, coming back to you again. Yeah, everything I do.
And it's just one of my proudest moments. I can't say enough nice things about Bruce as a man, as a musician. He's been so generous to me over the years. I've been on stage with him many times. When my son was going to school, he gave him like a summer apprentice job on the road with him. And he's brought me on, and he's brought both of us on stage to sing Born to Run at the Stade de France, which is an 80,000 seat venue here in Paris, which was just mind-blowing, to see my son there. The way he sang that verse and he comes in on the choruses, it's beautiful.
Yeah, everything I do
That was Everything I Do Leads Me Back to You by Elliott Murphy from his 1995 album, Selling Gold. Paul, I believe you have our number 2 pick.
Alton, I do. Team Derringer, pick number 2. Our favorite songs by Elliott Murphy so far. Number 2 is a song that really shows the coming of streaming music. Because this song has streamed over 3.5 million times on Spotify alone. So it really shows you what's happening to the music industry. It's gone from people buying CDs or albums or cassettes, and now it's about listening to streams on whatever platform you want to listen to it on. The song at number 2 is A Touch of Kindness.
A little touch of kindness for a start. A little bit of sweetness, it won't tear you apart.
From 2007, Elliott, tell us about A Touch of Kindness.
This totally took me by surprise. I wasn't following the numbers on Spotify, and all of a sudden that song had over 1 million, and then it hit 2 million, then it hit 3 million, and we did a short video for that, which Gaspar directed right on my street in front of my house, and I think that might have started the ball rolling. Olivier Durand, my guitar player, was in the video. I think it's just kind of caught the zeitgeist of the world today, Maybe that's what we need, a touch of kindness. And we do it at every show. And Olivier Durand, my guitar virtuoso, we've been playing together for 28 years. He gets a standing ovation almost every time he does a solo on that song because he's just so damn good.
The song is perfect, Elliott, because it grabs your attention. It starts off with you playing the guitar, and then Olivier comes in with that really knockout of, it's just a fantastic overlay on what you're doing. And so as a listener, you're already hooked. Even before you start singing, a person is hooked to the song.
A little touch of kindness for a start. A little bit of sweetness that won't tear you apart.
I think it's got that Layla thing, da-da-da-da-da-da, and this has got da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's got its own kind of riff, which becomes a very integral part of the song. People recognize it. Once we start the song, they say, well, I think we know this, and then he goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and there you go. We're off to the races.
Listeners, at number 2, pick number 2 for Team Derringer. That is A Touch of Kindness by Elliott Murphy. Laura, I'm going to hand it over to you for number 1. I hope that's okay.
That's okay. Pick number 1 is Theme for a Broken Poet from the motion picture soundtrack, Broken Poet. It's a 2020 movie about a fictional rocker, Jack Lyon. The movie and soundtrack are written by Elliott and his son, Gaspar.
You wanna dance? Go pay the piper and let the passion take you higher. Coming down real life.
Tell us all about it.
Wow. My foray into Hollywood didn't quite happen like I expected it would, but I had a book of short stories that were published in Spanish some years ago. And this director, Emilio Ruiz, he had bought that book, and I met him at a festival, and he said, I've always thought that story, The Lion Sleeps Tonight, which is about the rocker who went to Paris and everyone thought he was dead, but he wasn't really, could make a good movie. He said, I have a producer right now who would be willing to finance it, and you want to do it? And I said, sure. We had some very marvelous actors involved. Marissa Berenson was in the film, and my good friend Michael O'Keefe, who's an actor. He was married to Bonnie Raitt for a long time, the great blues woman.
Yeah,
and,
love her.
I said, who's going to play Jake Lyon? And he said, you. And then when we finished the film, all the shooting here, he said, we need one special moment in that film. Do you think Bruce Springsteen would agree to be in it? And I said, well, I think it'd be interesting to have Bruce and Patty in it. So once again, the man is just generous beyond belief. I called him up. He said, sure. The film crew went out to New Jersey. I was not there when they did it. And I sent them the script and all the lines. Bruce didn't say any of his lines. He just improvised. Patty remembered her lines. She stuck to the script. It was just marvelous to have them in it. Unfortunately, the movie was to be released in March 2020. It was going to premiere at a
What happened then?
What happened then? It was going to premiere at the New York festival in New York called the New York International Film Festival on the 26th of March.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks before, everything got canceled.
I just tried to be free.
And listeners, that's pick number 1, Theme for a Broken Poet.
You are listening to Derringer Discoveries.
With listeners in more than 30 countries.
Hi, my name is Alana Joy, and I'm the lead singer of alternative rock band Lost Youth from Cape Town, South Africa. I love listening to Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
Alton, I think you've got a bonus pick for us.
Yeah, listeners, you are lucky. We do have a bonus pick by Elliott Murphy. The song is called Old Timer. It is his most recently released single, released back in April of 2024. And Elliott, this is a little of a compound question. So we were talking earlier in the interview, and you were talking about Last of the Rock Stars, that you had a line in there, who will be left to play. And you also have a line in Old Timer that intrigued me that goes like this. It says, "'Cause I'm cruising toward 100, that's my goal, and I'd love to take you with me, body and soul."
'Cause I'm cruising toward 100, that's my goal. And I'd love to take you with me, body and soul.
So tell us about that. You've come a long way. Who are you wanting to take with you, body and soul?
I think I was really thinking of my public and my audience. That song was inspired by a show I did in March at a club in Paris called The New Morning. Now, The New Morning is a legendary club here. I mean, everyone from, it's mainly a jazz club, Chet Baker, Nina Simone, Miles Davis. And when Prince got finished doing a concert in Paris once, he then went to The New Morning and jammed, till 6 in the morning. And I've been playing there for 30 years, over 30 years. And I usually play there around my birthday, and it's morphed into this 2 nights, usually sold out. It's about a 500-seater. The fans come from all over Europe, some from the United States. And the reception I got at those birthday shows, I turned 75. It was just so moving, and I was so grateful. And that song came, I think I started to write that after the first night, and then we sang it the second night. So that's what really inspired it, the dedication, with my fans. I always say after my family, my fans are my greatest treasure. They've really kept me going all these years.
And I say this is something to be proud of, to have done it all and lived to tell the tale. I'm a stone cold rock and roll survivor now. An old timer was not taking down his sails. And if I can be so bold, let my last words be foretold. I'm telling you, I just don't feel that old.
That is Old Timer by rock and roll legend Elliott Murphy, his latest single as of this recording, released in April of 2024.
Hi, this is David Husted from Hollywood, Maryland. I do not like Derringer Discoveries. I love Derringer Discoveries.
Elliott, do you have anyone that you would like to send a shout-out message to that they could tap into our episode and hear a shout-out to him or her or them?
Well, first I want to shout out to my wonderful publicist, Ann Layton, who put this all together. And we've been working together for years now, must be 20 years. And she's always come up with some marvelous surprises like you guys today. So a shout out to Ann Layton. Who else can I shout out to who's listening? I'd like to shout out to John Mellencamp. How about that?
Yeah.
Haven't seen him in years, but he did a radio show many years ago where he sang Last of the Rock Stars. Who else I'd like to shout out to? My brother, Matthew.
Yeah.
He's on Long Island somewhere. Who else? The producer of my first album, Peter Siegel, who really did a great job producing that. And really to all my fans, you're the ones, you're the magic ingredient. You guys and gals, you're always there for me.
Elliott, you will always be Elliott Murphy, and more recently you played the character of Jake Lyon, but now we have one more honor to bestow upon you. In addition to being Elliott Murphy and Jake Lyon, we'd like to make you an honorary Derringer. You can tell Rick that you are now Elliott Derringer.
I will accept that. I've received some awards in my life. I'm a Chevalier and from the French Minister of Culture, and I got the Médaille de Paris, but nothing tops being a Derringer.
Until next time, listeners, this has been Paul Derringer.
This is Laura Derringer.
This is Alton Derringer.
And this is Elliott Derringer.
And you have been listening to Derringer Discoveries, a music adventure podcast.
In your sister's room. That's where it started. In your sister's
room. And he got loose and walked on stage in the middle of the concert. So I kind of picked him up and held him up to the microphone and said, Gaspar, say something to the audience. And he went, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's what he had heard me say.
Who's your bass player on that song?
My bass player is my brother, Matthew Murphy.
Yeah.
And Matthew played bass on all that album, and he toured with me. And he became a tour manager. Now, let me tell you, I think he's done much better as a tour manager than he would have done as my bassist. They were both away, and I was kind of in the office, which was my brother's place, and the phone rang, and it was a record store in New York who wanted 50 more albums of Affairs, which is our first release. And I said, okay, we'll get them right down to you. And so I packed up the albums. It was vinyl, because that's all there was back then.
Right.
And I walked into the store and I said, did you order, where's the manager? They showed him that. I said, you ordered the 50 Elliott Murphy albums? And he said, yes, but aren't you Elliott Murphy? I said, yes. He said, and you deliver the albums yourself? And I said, yes. He said, why? He said, well, I want total artistic control. And that goes all the way to handing the albums to you. So
we want to give you the opportunity to tell our listeners maybe one of your personal favorite songs by you that we didn't already cover.
Yes. And I know you asked me to pick one, and now I'm trying to remember which one I picked. Can you give me a hint? As my friend Bruce has often said, the songs know more about us than we know about the songs.
Last of the rock stars, me and you. Rock and roll's here to stay, and who we left to play. I call my mama, please don't cry. Don't you know what I feel inside?